Winter is coming. Direwolves are back, baby. Pretty remarkable news from the genetics company Colossal, which has raised 3 direwolf pups. They seem happy and healthy, and this is despite the fact that direwolves went extinct some 10,000 years ago. However, is this story all it seems? Or is some thick white fur being pulled over our eyes? And are we really wise enough as a species to be resurrecting glamorous, long-dead animals? How can the humble chicken provide us with a valuable cautionary tale about humanity's relationship to charismatic fauna? We'll cover all of this and more in today's episode on The Liberator. This is a place where we try and learn lessons from the past in order to better the present. So first of all, if you haven't heard and you've just been thawed out of the Siberian permafrost, we have direwolves now. And here they are, Romulus, Remus, and Khaleesi. Bit cringe that, Khaleesi. Not sure I like it. No. My daughter's called Khaleesi. How can you call a dog Khaleesi? Except there is a catch, and the catch is that these are not really direwolves. They are grey wolves with 14 of their genes edited to resemble the genes of direwolves. So basically their genes have been edited so that they look like direwolves, they maybe even act like direwolves, but no actual direwolf DNA was spliced into their genes, if you see what I mean. They're grey wolves whose genes have been sort of tampered with so that they resemble direwolves. Which is still awesome, don't get me wrong. They got white coats, they've got broader shoulders, bigger heads, all the same as direwolves, and that is badass. But we must contain our wolfish grins just a little bit, as these are not in fact direwolves, but grey wolves with direwolfish features. So, what are direwolves anyway? They were basically big-ass, hairy white wolves who lived in the Americas between 125,000 and 10,000 years ago. They were as big or even bigger than the biggest wolves alive today. They would have lived on bison and camels and wild horses, maybe even small mammoths. They would have been a ferocious apex predator, a ruthless pack animal. We actually have loads of direwolf remains, interestingly enough, particularly from a super important site called La Brea Tar Pits in California. It's a place where sticky tar oozes straight out of the earth. And in prehistoric times, animals would fall into this tar, including direwolves. It's thought that herbivores who had fallen into these tar pits would have proven irresistible to direwolves who would have tried to fish them out and subsequently fell into the tar themselves, dying a sticky and hot, probably very painful death. These wolves were in a bit of a dire situation, hey? Perhaps that's where they got their name from. Please like and subscribe. The fossilized teeth of direwolves often show wear associated with crunching through bones. And direwolves had powerful jaws and thick shoulders, even if they weren't that much bigger than the biggest grey wolves today. But funnily enough, they may not have actually been that closely related to grey wolves. They might actually be closer relatives of African wild dogs and jackals. A study in 2021 showed that direwolves seemingly diverged from grey wolves some 6 million years ago, making direwolves as closely related to grey wolves as human beings are to chimpanzees. But what's really cool is that direwolves would have coexisted with humans too, the Paleo Indians who moved into the Americas tens of thousands of years ago. Just imagine that on some wind-swept evening 12,000 years ago. Fir trees shaking, lakes and rivers rippling, humans huddling over some glowing heart of a dying fire, and they hear thundering howls and see the glint of poison eyes in the moonlight. And we can potentially see this sort of thing all over again. How freaking epic! In Time magazine, Colossal's chief science officer Beth Shapiro said, "If we want a future that is both bionumerous and filled with people, we should be giving ourselves the opportunity to see what our big brains can do to reverse some of the bad things that we've done to the world already." So we could be talking about restoring entire ecosystems populated with ancient, extinct animals. Or at least animals edited to be very similar to your woolly mammoths and your direwolves and your woolly rhinos. In fact, they have already started preparing for a hairy Jurassic Park in Russia. It's called Pleistocene Park, and the idea is that it'll be populated with resurrected Ice Age megafauna someday. Indeed, Colossal, the company behind the direwolves, say they want to revive mammoths too. But I mentioned chickens and I put them on the thumbnail. Why? What do giant, prehistoric wolves have to do with the curious cluckers who happen to be the most common bird on the planet? Now, if you've watched my video about the mysterious beast of Persepolis, you'll probably know what I'm about to tell you. And if you haven't seen that video, I highly recommend it. Go and check it out. But turns out chickens have not always been so common, at least not in Britain. In Britain, where I'm from at one point, they were actually really, really rare. In fact, maybe as rare as direwolves are in 2025. This is because chickens originate in Southeast Asia, and it took a long time for them to arrive on Europe's shores. At first, when they arrived in Britain, some point in the Iron Age, they came only in very small numbers, and they would have been wonderful, mysterious oddities, curiosities. And in Britain, this led to a wonderful thing. These animals were worshipped. Julius Caesar actually reports this in his commentaries on his conquest of Gaul. He said that the Britons revered chickens and refused to harm them. Archaeological evidence has since followed, showing chicken bones recovered from Iron Age sites without any slaughter marks. It seems that these chickens were tenderly buried by ancient Britons and weren't harmed. But what happened to these glorious, beautiful birds whose plumage burned with the light of 1 trillion suns? What happened through the Roman years and into the medieval period, all the way through modern times to now? What happened to chickens? I think we know the story. The closest thing you can find to worshipping chickens in today's Britain is KFC's sinister slogan, "Believe in chicken." Yeah, you guys believe in chicken. You believe in torturing them. Ancient Britons really believed in chickens. They valued chickens. But nowadays we believe in locking chickens up and separating them from all love and kindness, breeding them to get so big that they can barely walk, deformed and made to grow as big as possible to be as profitable as possible, forcing them to live in sheds teeming with feces and foul and killing them in their billions. So what am I saying here exactly? What, we're going to start factory farming direwolves? Going to eat them and turn them into coats? Well, probably not. But, in time, fashionable pets? Exhibits in zoos? Who's to say we wouldn't turn direwolves into commodities and merchandise them, you know, turn them into a money-making racket for Game of Thrones fans who forgot how badly they massacred the ending of the show? It's quite possible. I'm definitely not accusing Colossal of having some insidious plans to monetize direwolves, by the way. I don't think that's right. But all I'm saying is we, human beings, we love new things, right? And then they aren't new anymore. They're boring. And we tend to neglect boring and unimportant things. Like chickens. I think chickens are great, by the way. I'm an ancient Briton in this regard. I'm the most patriotic British person of them all. Nigel Farage wants to take us back to the 1950s. I want to take us back to the 50s BC. Maybe ancient people, when they first arrived in the Americas, saw direwolves and were amazed. Maybe they even worshipped these animals in a similar way to Britons worshipping chickens. Maybe they felt a sense of connection and awe when they saw one of these magnificent white beasts with their shaggy coat and their penetrating howl. But by the time the direwolves died out, whether they were hunted to death or starved because all of their prey had been hunted to death by humans, or was just climate change, whatever, when they disappeared, did anybody shed a tear? Maybe nobody even noticed at all. We had grey wolves by then, of course. So all in all, super freaking awesome that we have direwolves now. I can't lie, it's great. Apparently George R. Martin has seen them in person as well, and apparently he cried, which is great. It's a huge day for nerds. But let's try and keep caring about these guys after the headlines have all died down. And let's try and evolve our curiosity in direwolves into a love of natural history more generally. Let's stay vigilant about all the species we haven't lost yet. And let's do something to help protect them so that future generations won't have to wonder wistfully what seeing a rhino or a tiger was like. And even, if I may be so bold, can we spare a thought, or maybe even do something, for the humble chicken? Those vanquished kings, those toppled titans, those champions of the Celts, the humble Gallus, who needs love, affection, and strong-armed help far, far more than a few white-coated pooches from a fantasy novel. As always, thank you for watching. I felt I had to talk about this amazing news this week, but we'll be back soon on a very different topic. Next week I'll be talking about a poem that really changed my life. It's one of the greatest pieces of medieval literature, hell, it's one of the greatest pieces of literature, full stop, I've ever read. And it's the 12th century Sufi Persian masterpiece, the Conference of the Birds. There are no prehistoric wolves in it, I'll admit that. But if you're after an enlightening perspective on the world, then this is a video you don't want to miss. And in order to not miss it, you should subscribe and hit the bell button so you see when the video is posted. And if you enjoyed this video, please like it, leave it a comment. It's the only way the channel can grow, and I really appreciate your time as always. I will see you next time for the Conference of the Birds. Ciao now.